we're going to do a movie. And Ilene Beck, this is your life. Now, you guys better enjoy that. We're preserving that for posterity. You look gorgeous, Mother.
Yeah.
Okay, just sit down there.
Now, where am I going to sit?
Right there on the sofa, and Tammy will sit down by you. Give her a love again, honey.
You can see give me a love in the camera.
Give Eileen a love.
Give me a love.
Big hug.
Oh, look, you can see us in the picture. Aren't you a cute boy? You, my cute little Kimball. I love you.
There, Eileen. Tell her.
Hey, give him a cookie for that.
He's had, too.
He has?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to be very graceful on this couch.
Aren't you? We'll put another pillow behind you then. Do you want to move over into the chair?
No, what I'm trying to do is
Should I put one back behind?
sit a little bit like a lady.
Should I put one tall?
Well, I'm not going to worry about that. We're going to get up closer to you anyway. Or we're going to have you fairly close.
All right. Is that? Well, that's
If
good.
anyone wants to know, I just pulled the microphone out, and that's what that funny sound was.
Okay.
Okay, now we're just going to get
bring in my
this
book?
out. Pammy's been
Pam?
working on
Well, I
Eileen.
had one laying right out there.
Pammy's been working and putting Eileen's books together. And we're just going to let her start on the beginning of her life and tell you a little bit of fact or two. And then she's going to use some of these pictures and just tell you all the funny things that they've done. All the fun things of their life.
You just want the fun things, you
No,
don't
I want the serious things too. The good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. Don't we, Pam?
Yeah.
We want the work.
Okay.
Sit over there by her for a minute, honey.
Now, you want me to...
Okay, now tell us where you were born,
All
who your
right.
parents were.
That's the reason I brought this for a minute.
Eileen, do you want to hold up the pictures of them?
Yeah, we'll zoom right in on the pictures of Grandma and Grandpa. Any pictures you've got. She really was born.
I wonder what?
You really were born.
Oh, yeah.
She's getting to it.
Bit, and then we'll go into your house as well as your pictures up on your house. Don't be too serious.
You were born.
Yeah, I was born. I was born in Panguitch, Utah. And I was born in a little upstairs bedroom of my grandpa and grandmother Prince's place. And it was the first brick home built in Panguitch.
Okay, who are your parents?
And
This is the picture of the house.
that isn't as good a picture as that other one is. But this is a, wait a minute, turn it off a minute, Ruth. This is another one there. Yeah, you got it good there. This is the house where I was born in Panguitch, Utah, April the 28th, 1902. And this is my grandfather and Grandma Prince's home. It was the first home, the first brick home built in Panguitch. And you can see it was kind of a pink red. It was not the color red brick home that we have now. Do you want, am I keeping good?
Yeah.
I was born to James Ezra and Effie Pearl Dalton Prince. And to all of you, my mother would be E.P. Deepy. and we lived in Panguitch for
Don't you have a picture there of Grandma and Grandpa?
yes. This is my mother. She was born in Circleville to oh shoot.
William?
Huh?
William?
William. No, not William.
Yeah, Grandpa Billy.
No, this is my mother.
Oh.
And she was born in Wildcat Canyon, or what they called Beaver Canyon then, to Polly Heskett Allred, and well, I'm going to have something to shut it off a minute.
To Charles Wakeman Dalton.
My grandfather was Charles Wakeman Dalton, and my grandmother Elizabeth Heskett Allred, and she was the polygamist wife, the second wife of Charles Wakeman Dalton. Just a little interesting thing there. His first wife asked Grandma Dalton to be a second wife or to be a polygamist wife. And they got along very well, and they had 10 children. And then my grandfather,
Go ahead.
on my father's side, is William Prince, and Louisa Eveline Lee.
Have you got little pictures there of them?
And I have these little pictures like this.
I've got pictures of him like this. I think he is really nice looking.
Okay.
Now,
Okay, hold that up and I can...
this is Grandpa Dalton,
Is this Grandma?
and that is Grandma Dalton. And I don't have any young pictures
Kind
of
of bring
Grandma.
those a little bit closer to the TV. Here.
Charles Wakeman Dalton.
You got it on? You want me to hold
Yeah,
it?
I've got it on, but I can't see it. I've got it too close. Where are you?
Right
Can't
here.
find you. No, put it right in front of Eileen's blouse.
My grandmother Dalton, Elizabeth Heskett Allred, and my grandfather Dalton, what did I say his name? Charles Wakeman Dalton. My grandmother, did you get that other about the second line?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now you want this one on my, why don't I just hold this like, oh, did you get a picture of my mother?
Now that's Grandpa right there.
Yeah, this is Grandpa
Grandpa.
Prince.
Okay, bring that just a little bit closer, Pammy. Now keep the glare down.
Trying to get it.
No, you're slanting it.
I know, but on the TV I can see that it's
Hold it up straight and keep the glare down. There you go. All right, now. All right, that's pretty good. Okay, go ahead.
Now that's my father, James Ezra Prince. And that's when he was
Where's your mother's?
about 51 years old. There's-
Just the other page. There's your mother. Do you want them?
Where's
That's that's mother just before she died. And she died in,
So how old would she be there then?
she was, mother was 72 when she died. She'd be between 70 and 72 there. She lived at my place when she, the last 6 months of her life, she lived in my place and was an invalid. She was in bed. She died of cancer. But on her younger pictures here, she taught school. She graduated from the Brigham Young Academy, and she taught school at Cedar City. She had an elementary teacher certificate, and she taught in Cedar City. And she was 26 years old when she and Dad were married. They were married in the Manti Temple. Oh, June 6, 1901. And I was born the next April.
Do we have a baby picture of you?
No.
I'll show you the cutest picture.
Smile at you.
Now what are you doing? You know that.
Can you see it?
Yeah, that's when we were. That's shortly before we left Panguitch.
Now, which one's you?
This one. Right there.
That cute little girl with the long curls?
Yeah, the
long
curls.
curls.
Isn't that cute?
Oh, how cute.
That's me and my brother Wallace.
Which one's Wally?
Well,
That one.
and Clark
Uh-huh.
and Frank
Uh-huh.
and Genta.
Okay.
And that was shortly before we. You don't want. What are you doing with those other pictures? There?
Oh, well, that's all right. You've got it on there now. Go ahead and put it. That's Mom and Aunt Janta.
Yeah,
On
that
the other side, honey.
the
Mom and Aunt Janta and who?
it's Genta and me, isn't it?
Yeah, but who's the little girl?
Jenda's daughter or
Oh,
something.
that's Sonia.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's Sonia.
There.
Okay.
There we go. All righty. All right, now go back to your life.
About your dad and your mom a little bit. You gotta.
Well, we lived in Panguitch when we were in the wintertime, and then we lived in the summertime. We'd go up to Panguitch Lake, and the Panguitch Lake.
Is that this?
Yes, my grandfather and grandmother Prince homesteaded the Panguitch, the ranch up on the Panguitch Lake, and they built a great big barn and a log cabin on the Panguitch Lake, and we were off to the south. We were on the southwest. Oh, their ranch is on the south and the west edge of Panguitch Lake. And when my mother and dad were first married, they lived up what's the matter?
Nothing. Go on.
When my mother and dad were first
You're
married.
just telling Pam what about this.
Oh,
But that's all right. Just go away. Go the way you are.
They moved up to the ranch, and Grandpa and Grandma Prince lived up there too. And Grandpa or Dad's sisters, I don't know whether any of his brothers still lived up there or not. I think Uncle Oscar had a little ranch over further north than Dad, than Grandpa Prince's. But at that time, at the turn of the century, Panguitch Lake was quite a resort, and they had a big hotel up there, and they had a real nice dance floor. And I remember, I'm going to get ahead of my story.
Well, that's all right. We don't care if you jump around a little, do we, Pam?
I remember that, I remember when the first picture show came up there. And we went to we took a sack of turnips and a sack of and some potatoes. All the family went to the show, and we got in for the produce. And they had like weekly shows over there, and they had weekly dances or more often. And I think that's where I learned at a very early age to dance. My mother and dad both liked to dance. They were both very popular when they were young, and they learned early they learned to be very good dancers. And so we'd all go to they'd always take the family, and at that time there was Wallace and Clark, and me, and I don't remember, probably Frank was born, but about that time he was. And we'd go over and we'd dance, and Dad and Mother would dance with us kids and taught Wallace to dance. Wallace was a real good dancer, and they taught me to dance. So we danced as long as I can remember. And then we'd have fun on the lake. As I remember my childhood in Panguitch, it was I had a good childhood. I had a fun childhood, and my dad and mother had about 20 head of cows that they milked, and then they made butter and cheese, and I don't know that I like this.
The cheese, though, Grandma was famous for her cheese, wasn't she?
Oh yes, Grandma.
Well, show me how you had to do your hands
When did I do that?
for your milking the cows.
Oh, I learned at a very early age to milk cows.
Yeah.
Strong muscles, huh?
Yeah.
But up on the ranch, you had a spring house, a little house that you kept all the milk and the cheese and stuff in, and it had a creek that ran underneath it. You
Yeah.
kept it right cool and nice.
Well, that came from the Blue Spring, and the Blue Spring around Panguitch was very famous. Everybody that would come up to the Panguitch Lake would like to go up to the Blue Spring, and that's kind of a little sidetrack, but it was an old crater. There's a lot of boulders and craters up around the Panguitch Lake and in that country. And the Blue Spring, they never knew how deep it was. You could drop a tin can down there, and it'd look like a gold bracelet at the bottom of it. But anybody ever dared get it, go around or try to swim it or anything, and it was real cold. And the stream from the Blue Spring that went down through the Prince Ranch, and then they built a little house over it. They called it the Spring House, with shelves in it, and it wasn't a very big spring, but there were real good mountain trout, rainbow trout. You could nearly always catch a trout down in the Spring House, but they weren't too.
All right,
big.
now before you go on, you got to show them how you used to catch trout.
Well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Yeah, but we'll come back. We'll pick up the edges.
Well, Wally and I, Dad had everybody in our family worked, and we worked outside. So when it was milking time, when I was too little to learn to milk, or too little to milk, then we had to take the calves away from the cows. They'd let them get the milk down good and have a little milk, and then we had to take them and run them out and run them into the holding trail. And Wally and I had that job for for several years, but I don't think I was more than 5 years old or 6 when I learned to milk. And I'd have to, then Wally and Clark would take care of the calves. But when we get through, we could go. We could take let the calves out and follow them down into the pasture, down to the edge of the lake. And then we could go out on the boat. And we had just a rowboat that hold 2 or 3 people. And the oars, I think maybe were about 5 or 6 feet. My mother and Dad always said, now, they'd let Wally and me go out on the lake alone, and we'd paddle that thing and take a fishing pole, and they'd say, now don't go out further than you can put the oar down. We couldn't swim, so I don't know why they say that. But anyway, we couldn't swim, but we'd always go out there and fish.
Did you have a life jacket on?
Huh?
Did you have a
No,
life?
no, I never heard of a life jacket.
Grandma Prince was more frightened of water than Pappy.
Oh, and Mother was
She was
so...
paranoid of the water.
I can't imagine my mother letting me do things like that. And she'd say, but my dad would take us out in the boat, and then he'd let me and Wally go alone. And he'd always, I'm sure Mother's had meant quite a bit to say about it, but I never heard her. And away we'd go, and we'd go out on the fish and fish. And we'd usually catch enough fish for supper or for breakfast or whatever the meal was. Mother made the best biscuits you ever tasted.
But didn't you often just flip them with...
Oh, when we get, there were other fish in the lake besides trout, but we didn't, and the Panguitch Lake got where they had to shut it down for a while because they got overrun with them. And if we get one of those trash fish on our line, we just swing it around and flip it like that.
What do you mean swing it around on the string?
Yeah,
on your pole?
On the pole, we just swing the pole for about 3 times and get the fish swing in there, and we give it a quick jerk and break its neck and flip it off and flip it back in the water. So we never had anything but rainbow trout, or but the best of fish.
Well, I thought you used to just catch them with your hand.
Oh, I like you said that. I think we could go down in the Blue Spring and reach down and catch them.
In the spring house and places, and you flipped them out with your hand, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. But it was on the lake that we always fished.
Now, before you go on, you've told us many times about you going up on that lake, not in a boat,
In a tin can.
but in a
Oh, that wasn't the lake we went on.
wash tub.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't the lake we went on. There was we were up on the mountain, and that mountain was known, that west mountain was known as Prince Mountain. And along there was a pretty good sized creek. Oh, it was I'd say about 5 or 6 feet across, and it had there's a foot or 2 feet deep of water that something would go, and it went right through our trail. That's what they kept. They'd wash and keep the trail clean by running that water through there. Well, this wasn't. One day, quite a few times when Wally and Clark and I would go up playing around on on the creek. And one day we took a wash tub, just a number 3 wash tub. And we put, Wally and Clark and I all got in it. And we were going for a ride down the creek, and it was a little bit too swift. Wally and I got out, but we couldn't get Clark out. And so then he just went a-bobbling right down through the meadow and out into a pond that they had a sawmill up above our place. And they used to let another stream that would go through the sawmill and wash the sawdust down, and there was I don't know why, but I think there was kind of craters all up around in there, because there was a pretty good place where they let the sawdust just trying to fill up that place, that hole in the meadow. And I don't know whether how deep that ever got. Yeah, but we couldn't stop the tub, and we couldn't get Clark out. He went right out into that pond of sawdust, and we got scared. And I don't know whether it was me or Wally. One of us went running back to the house and told him what we'd done, and told him Clark was out in the tub in the sawdust and we couldn't get him out. So,
Did you get spanked?
I don't know, I think we caught a pretty good licking that day. I don't remember. I always said that my dad never hit me, only once. But the boys, I'm pretty sure we got a right good going after that day. And then another thing that we like to do is was ride. We'd ride everything when we'd get those calves and stuff, calves and the cows out in the corrals. We'd try to put a saddle on them. We'd ride.
The cow?
Yeah. I don't know how we got a saddle up on them. I can't figure how we did that.
But you did it, didn't
But
you?
we got a saddle on one of the cows, and she let us get on and ride. But the calves and buckets, I learned to ride bucking calves when I was just a little bit of a kid, and we kind of caught heck for that a few times too, for putting the saddle on the cows.
Where was your mother when you were saddling the cow?
Well, she was in the house making cheese and butter.
Biscuits.
Yeah, and I don't know. I can't. I never was any good to my mother. I don't know. I can't ever remember helping her in the house. But we were when we weren't helping.
You were too busy riding the cows.
We were riding the cows and riding everything we could. And once we got on a pig, and he took us through the fence and right through that stream that I've been telling you about, and washed us off in the water. And we got.
Was there more than one of you on
Oh,
at a time?
I think I was on that time. I think it was me that got the. Yeah, but we used to ride the pigs every time we get around them. So I remember once getting washed off. I'm sure Clark and Wally got washed off more times than once. I don't know how come we get by with doing things like that and have to go in the house and get cleaned up. But anyway.
Did you have running water in the house?
No. Well, we
Because I had running water outside.
we did in a way. they made an old flume. I've got a book down there. It's called, that book of Grandpa Billy. If any of you want to know how the life, and that's Grandpa Billy. There's a section in this that you could read. I think I wrote a little note in here, and one or two of them said they didn't have that note, but if they don't, I've got copies of it. And there's a section in here that explains the house and the churn and the great big vats. They had great big vats that they'd bring all the milk down, and we had a separator. And sometimes they'd make butter, and 2 or 3 days a week they'd make cheese. And Mother couldn't stand. Mother never did like milk, and she couldn't stand the smell of it. It'd make her sick. And she was usually either had a nursing baby or I got an itch. She either had a nursing baby or she was pregnant and sick to her stomach, and she'd hang her head over the side of to the side of that vat and make cheese. And they had to go down in under with their hands like this and break it up with the curd.
Break up the.
And they had a big long vat, and then a big long knife that they'd cut it in little squares, and then as the way it'd raise up on it, then they'd go down under with the hands and bring it back up and make curd and make cheese. And then they had a flume. See, the house was down lower, and then from the hill they tapped into this stream I've been telling you about, and they had an old water flume, and down to the bottom of it there was a great big wheel that turned the churn, and it was we got fresh water that way out of that flume, but we never had water in the house. No, never had.
You didn't have a bathroom in the house?
No.
So what did you do?
Yeah, now.
You always had another place.
What happens if you, in the middle of the night?
You got up and ran out.
Outside?
Sure.
In the snow?
Yeah. Yeah, there were times when I ran, I was going trailing out there with my bare feet in the snow. But anyway, then Mother, they had 2 or 3 cheese presses, and when they get the cheese, they had great big farms like this that they'd put it in, and then they had smaller ones and smaller ones, and then they had the thing that they'd screw down on it to press it so that make them shit round and make the cheese come out. So, and then we always had lots of pigs. They'd have the whey, and the calves would get the skim milk. And so we had a good living up on the farm. It was an awful hard living, hard for my mother and dad, but for me and Wally and Clark, I can't ever remember Frank up there, and I'm sure Jenda was nearly, well, she was born, she was only a baby. Wasn't very old when we left, when we sold the ranch. But,
Well, now, you had horses up there, didn't you?
oh yeah.
You mentioned the cattle and the pigs, but you didn't mention the horses.
Oh, well,
You always had a horse.
Oh yeah. Any time you were out in the field or in the meadow, we'd get on one of the horses and ride in, without a bridle or a saddle or anything. Just get on the horse and slap him a little bit to one side and slap him a little bit to the other, and lay down on his neck and ride in. I rode all the horses that we ever had. sometimes we get on the work horses and then that'd make Dad mad.
No wonder he calls you Tempest and Sunshine.
I was always,
Who called you that?
oh yeah. Yeah, that was
Grandpa
my,
Prince called her Tempest and Sunshine.
Tempest and Sunshine. That was my name when I was little. But don't get that going.
Why?
Huh? 'Cause I'm still that.
Because she could be such a sweet little doll, and then all of a sudden she could do some of the darndest things to give them fits.
Kind of like Kimball, huh?
Well, we still.
Now, before you get off the ranch, tell us the story about the Indians coming when Grandpa, that was Grandpa and Grandma Prince, wasn't it?
Yeah, that.
That was Grandpa Billy when he was
Yeah,
little.
but I will tell you, Grandpa and Grandma Prince, I don't ever remember them living on the ranch when. I think it was only a year or two after Mother and Dad went up there that my Mother and Dad took over. And sometimes one of Dad's sisters lived up there. But we always had, like I said a little bit ago about Panguitch Lake and Resort, lots of people came up to the resort. Lots of people came up there in the summertime, and it was at that time, Panguitch Lake was a lively resort, and people would come up through from St. George, and they'd bring all kinds of fruit, figs and pomegranates and raisins and almonds, and well, we always had things like that because Mother and Dad would trade butter and cheese, and they trade for a great couple of big sacks of almonds, 100 pounds of almonds, or 2 or 3 cases of raisins. So we had good things like that. But in the wintertime, there were quite a few Indians still up in there, and they didn't have. The Indians were friendly. They were friendly with Grandpa Prince, and they knew they could always get something to eat over there, and they continued it with my Mother and Dad. And there was one old Indian that used to bring Dad venison, and he'd bring it out of season. But he'd if he'd get hungry and want something, he'd come over and bring some venison, and they always gave him some butter and cheese and fed him. And I guess they gave him flour. I'm quite sure they gave him flour because they'd always give him provisions. So I learned not to be afraid of the Indians. But and then when we lived out on the reservation, I learned it more.
Okay, now what I want you to tell us is when Grandpa Billy and Grandma were up there, and she was alone, and the Indians that were not friendly with him came through, and the grape juice.
Yeah, well, I'll just have to remember from reading that, because I wasn't. Yeah. But Grandma was alone, and I don't think my mother went. It was before my Mother and Dad went.
Now this is Louisa.
Yeah, this is Louisa William Prince. Louisa Lee, and she was the daughter of John Doyle Lee. And Grandma, well, they used to bottle they used to bottle everything, and I could sit here for an hour and tell you the funny things that we did, the bitters and the teas and the arrow tea and the sagebrush tea and all that kind of thing that we had for spring tonics and for coughs and colds and some of the funny things they did to treat illnesses, you know. And so Grandma had bottled some bitters, and I don't know.
She's made some grape juice and
Yeah,
put some
she
bitters in it for a spring tonic, didn't she?
She put some. Well, she could have done that, but I think what she did, she made some grape juice, and she had some that was good, but she also had some aloes and bitters. I don't know. They just called it bitters, and it was the bitters that would just pucker you. If you took swallow that bitter stuff that she had, it'd pucker you for an hour and just pucker you, turn you inside out. And Grandma Prince was what Ruthie wanted me to tell you about is Grandma Prince was alone, and this bunch of these Indians came, and they wanted wine. They thought they knew that Grandma had some wine, so she had them all come in and sit down, and she went in the room where she had this stuff all stored up around where they put the cheese and the stuff they had. They all it was up on a shelf up next to the ceiling, and instead of getting a bottle of wine, she got a bottle of the bitters. And Indians are quite fun, and they're if they get a something happens and they think they don't want anyone to know the joke's on them. So the first old squaw that took a bottle, took a swig of that stuff that Grandma gave him, held her. She swallowed it down, and she never let on. And she passed the bottle to the next one, and they each one of them took a swig out of that bottle of bitters. And when they got to the end of it, they looked at one another, and they just turned and trailed and walked out and never said anything. But she got by with taking care of them, with giving them that bottle of bitters.
Oh, I always understood they said Mo Wampum's wife played heap big joke.
Well, they could have done that. They could have done that. It's in this book of Grandpa Billy.
Oh, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's where you read it.
All righty. Well, go on back to your days now.
Back to my days, well,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about all I need to say about Panguitch Lake.
Well, how about when you were little kids? You haven't told us much. You lived most of the time you were little there on Panguitch Lake.
Well, in the wintertime, in the summertime, we lived up on Panguitch Lake. And then in the wintertime, we moved down in Panguitch. And our first home in Panguitch was just a little funny lean-to shack, a two-bedroom or 2 or 3 room home, and then a little shack on it. And I can remember 2 or 3 things there. That Wally and I got typhoid fever when I was 4 and Wally was about 2, and we nearly died. And that's where I can remember most about the first time I really remember about blessings and laying on of hands and calling on the Lord to help. Because Wally was really bad, and the doctor said if he ever lived, he'd be deaf and dumb and blind. He said, why don't you just dedicate him to the Lord and ask him to take him? But they prayed that he'd either live to be sound and have his faculties, or that the Lord would take him. And he got better. And I can remember how sick we were. The first time that it was in the spring, and I remember crawling out of the front room, or the front yard there, and we got red root and pigweeds, and I pulled some pigweeds and some red roots, and Mother made greens out of them and cooked them up for greens. And we did that, and we had seagull lily bulbs, and we lived a lot off in the land, you know.
And you thought that was the scrumptious meal just after you got better, huh?
Well, no, but I learned it. I learned to like greens. I always have liked greens. I don't think I've ever liked dandelion greens, but I liked the pigweeds were all right, and it was just take off the roots of them and cook the rest of it, and it was good. They were kind of bitter. Mm-hmm. But then another thing I remember, when we lived in that little house, we were right next to Uncle Oscar and my cousin. They had their family, and my mother and my family were about the same age. And so there was Cecil and I were the same age. And then Della was Wally's age, and then the others were older than Uncle Locke's kids were. The rest of them were older than we were. So anyway, Cecil and I were real good friends, and we lived out there in that little place, and we were about a block and a half to the south and the east, to the north and the east of my Grandpa Prince's place. We were just straight back of Uncle Oscar's place, east of Uncle Oscar's place. So we had chickens there, and I guess we had sheep or lamb and pigs and things. We always had meat, and we always had eggs. But we could take an egg or a couple of eggs and go to the store. We'd have to walk past my grandmother's place and past in downtown about 2 blocks or 3 to the west of us. And there was a little place there that we could buy candy, or we could buy little trinket things and some.
With your eggs?
With the eggs, yeah. Yeah, I don't hardly ever remember having money.
Well, that'd be the day.
But we could just take, we could take 2 or 3 eggs and go, and we'd get an egg's worth of candy, or.
How much is an egg's worth of candy? One thing?
No, we'd get a handful of candy for an egg.
You think my boys would try that now?
But we'd, I've got 2 or 3 keepsakes. Well, Nedra's got one that's little, 2 or 3 little things that I remember that we got. We bought when it'd be birthdays or something like that.
Is that when you bought that dog?
No.
I'm not sure. But we'd buy we'd go down and get some. Mother'd give us 2 or 3 eggs, and we'd go. Whenever we had a treat, we'd just go get an egg's worth of candy, or take maybe a half a dozen eggs or a dozen eggs and get real cute little figurines and things. And so, and I remember Mother used to, if she'd buy groceries with it, and she'd send me downtown and send me with the eggs and tell me how much change I ought to have back. And so I was.
Would they give you money back as change?
Well, I got some change
Or
back.
did they give you credit or what?
I think they just gave us tokens. I don't really remember, but I know Mother did. We did shopping that way with our eggs.
Did you, when you'd go get candy like that, did you always go get permission to go get some eggs and take them, or did you have sufficient eggs that if you wanted some candy, you could just go get an egg and go down the store?
I'm sure we always got permission. And if we got candy, if we got anything, it had to be divided equally. I couldn't have a bigger piece than one of the other kids, or they couldn't have a bigger piece than I did. Mother would, well, we'd bring it home before we'd eat it, and then we'd divide it.
That's pretty darn good, I say. It would be gone long before you got it home nowadays.
Yeah, but we didn't. I don't know how we ever got by with that, but everybody got the same amount. If Mother had to break a piece in 2, we got it. It was broken in 2 so that nobody got a bigger portion than somebody else. Oh, shut it off for a minute.
The TV, Kimball.
Is that you? Is that me? Is that Eileen?
It's
Eileen
Wendy, isn't it? Is it Wendy?
No, that's Kimball.
You can give Eileen a kiss before you go?
Give me a kiss on the TV. Another show on TV. Did you see that kiss?
Are you a Beluga kid?
You're my baby. You're a cutie. Hey, you got pretty eyelashes. Have you got pretty eyelashes? Hey, did your dad get a deer? Did they get a deer up in the cabin, up to the cabin? And has Benji got the horns? Oh boy, what are you gonna do with them? You gonna hang your hat on them? Does he get them down in his room to hang the hat on? Is that where you put your hat? Down is your room with Kimball's and with Benji's and McKay's?
No, he sleeps in the family room.
Hasn't he got a room?
Yeah, but he doesn't sleep in it.
Mm-hmm. You like that granola bar? You're a funny kid.
Okay, give her a kiss bye-bye.
Give me a kiss bye-bye.
Come on.
Give me a kiss bye-bye. I love you.
Tell her you're going to go see the bus.
Gonna go see what? The bus.
I just wanted to tell her.
Are you gonna get on the bus? Do you ride the bus sometimes? Huh?
Come on, tell him bye-bye. Let's go.
Bye-bye, Kimball. I love you. A bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck.
Come on, Magoo.
Don't step on my pictures.
Step over him.
Okay, now you've got it.
Have you got it on now?
All right, now go.
This is the log cabin that my grandfather and grandmother Prince built, and then my dad added on to it. And they added on, Grandpa and Grandma Prince added
Now this is up at Panguitch
this
Lake.
is up at Panguitch Lake, yes, and And at the back is the Prince Mountain, and this is the mountain where we played, where Wallace and Clark and I think, played on that mountain, and I believe I knew every tree up in there. And then this home is where we lived in the summertime, and this is the ranch where on the west side of the west and south side of Panguitch Lake, and this is where my my mother and dad made their cheese and butter, and where I learned to milk cows and all of that. And Dad added a room onto the ranch house when I was just a baby, and he didn't get the floor straight. He had a slant, and I guess it slanted toward the door because I was in a walker, and the door was open, and I just went scooting right on out of the doorway and out into the yard on my dad's straight floor. But this is where I enjoyed so much of my early childhood, and I've told you about everything up there, but
You haven't told us about the Quaking
that's what I'm going to say. I've told you about most of the things up there, but the Quaking Aspen, the times Wally and I spent, and I think we took Clark on quite a few of them, but we usually made Clark the butt of the joke if whatever we were doing. And poor kid learned from a lot of just tagging us around and doing the things that if we wanted anyone to pull a joke on, we did it on Clark. But anyway, we'd go up and we'd climb all of those hills, and I don't remember what kind of pine trees they were. They had long, spindly needles on them, and pine gum. And when we weren't fooling around down in the meadows or with the animals, we'd go up in the back of the hill, on the hill there, and climb the trees and get gum, and we'd put it in a large tin, and then we'd have pine gum to last us all winter. And I think Wally and I climbed nearly all of the trees on that mountain and got gum off from them. And then there's a patch of Quaking Aspen that were a lot of fun to play in. And two of us would hold a Quaking Aspen down, one of the trees down. We get a tree as big as we could all pull down, and then one of us would get on it, and then the others would let go, and it would flip back up. And we'd ride that thing as long as it kept flipping in the wind or breeze like that.
Going up and down, huh?
Mm-hmm. We'd ride up and down that, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And I don't know, I suppose we got backed off a good many times. And I'm sure Clark got backed off because we'd get him on one of those, and then Molly and I'd let go, and he'd just sway in the breezes.
Okay, now we keep talking about Clark and Wally.
Okay.
And Panguitch Lake. So you've got a picture right there of Panguitch Lake. Show us the picture of Panguitch Lake.
Oh, wait a minute.
Right there's the side of you.
Now this is
later.
Yeah, this doesn't show the resort or anything. It's just that it gives you.
Yeah, no, we had a better one there at Panguitch Lake than that.
Well, I don't see him. This is the lake back up in here.
Okay.
But I don't. This is the lake back up in here, but I don't see it isn't big enough to show you how big the lake was. It was pretty good size across, a couple of miles across, I believe.
Okay. And that was your home. Now this is,
Now, we're not ready to talk about that for a minute.
okay, now that's Clark.
Now this is my brother Wallace.
Yeah,
I'm showing you this because he was really a good fisherman, and
I just got the little picture.
it looks to me like the picture we have here of
Okay, now let's get on the big one.
wait a minute, of Wally. This looks like a picture of Panguitch Lake, the Panguitch Lake country back there in the background. And that'd be typical of the fish we'd get out of the Panguitch Lake.
Okay.
And then this is a later picture. You got that?
Yeah, we've got.
And then these are pictures of my brother Clark. He's the second son, and the one that
Wally is the oldest. And he voted.
Wally is 2 years younger than I am,
Okay.
and Clark's 2 years younger than Wally.
Okay.
They're not quite. There wasn't quite 2 years. There's about like 19, 20 months between them. And this is Clark. Oh, and this is my brother Dennis, when he was
I don't know, but wait a minute.
dad.
Here, I zoom up on him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's Denny, and this one I don't know. That's another picture of Wally. We don't need that. Now, we were talking about our home in Panguitch, and we had that little lean-to, and then we built. My mother and Dad built this nice. Wait a minute. Should I just hold it like this?
Fine.
They built this nice home in Panguitch. They I think I told you once before that we'd go up to the lake like about the 1st of April or middle of April, and we'd stay until school had started in the fall, and then we'd come down and go to school. And this place in Panguitch, my mother and Dad built about 1906 or 1907, and it was one of the nicest homes in Pleasant Grove.
In Panguitch.
They're in Panguitch, yeah, in Panguitch. It was really a nice home, and there was you see the veranda that went around the side here, very typical of the homes that they're building now. And my dad and mother built this in about 1906 and 1907, and we lived there until 1914, when my dad went out to Roosevelt, and he went alone. He just went out doing a little exploring, I guess. He got kind of feeling like things were getting a little bit boring and not moving fast enough. But so he went out in Roosevelt, and he bought a home out in Roosevelt, and came back and told my mother that he bought this home out in Roosevelt, and he wanted to move out there. Well,
Okay, which one's that?
that's this one on the bottom here. It was this little stucco home with the bedrooms up in the top, and there's a parlor and a kitchen and a dining room kitchen, and 3 or 4 bedrooms. That's about the size of it. It was a far cry from what we had out in Roosevelt or in Panguitch.
Okay, now before you get to Roosevelt, Go back to Panguitch. You have a picture of the Panguitch school there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the school where we went to Panguitch, and I was in the 6th grade when we left Panguitch, and we left there in the fall, because I had started in school, and there's some Ipsums that live here in Pleasant Grove, and she's a daughter of Parley Ipson. That was my dad's fishing partner after, and took very good care of my dad after he got blind and lived in Parowan and Panguitch. But Parley Ipson was real good to me, and he came over and visited with us when we left Panguitch, and I guess Wally and Clark and me would be the only ones that went to school here. But I was in the 6th grade, and he came over and visited with us and wished us all good speed and all of the nice things. And we left Panguitch in a very pretty on a very pretty day.
How old were you when you left them?
Well, we were out there 7 years, and I was there from 1914 to 1921, so I'd be 12 when I went out there, wouldn't I?
Went out to Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm. I'd be 12 when I left Panguitch. And you want me to tell you about my operation in Panguitch before
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, in this nice home that Mother and Dad built, well, they didn't have doctors down in Panguitch. They didn't have a hospital. They didn't have any place to operate. But twice a year, Dr. Garn Clark, who was a Panguitch native, would come down, and Dr. Garn and Dr. J.C., that's his brother, and they'd go through, and if anybody needed operating or well, mainly operations, then they'd perform operations. And when I was about 11, no, I was younger than that. I was a little younger than 11. I was having pains in my stomach, and Dr. Clark stood me up, and he went that way on me, and I fainted. And so he said I had appendicitis, and he said the next time we come through, we'll have to operate. Well, they tried to cure me all that summer. It was in the spring when they did that, and all summer they tried to cure me. I took some of the nastiest tasting medicine you've ever imagined. I can still
Some of your good old home remedies, huh?
No, it wasn't a home remedy. This was a patent remedy that they gave me. And it didn't do any good. I got worse and worse. So when they came through, they said, well, we'll just have to operate. So they scrubbed my mother. Dad scrubbed the dining room down just like he'd scrub a hospital. They scrubbed it from head to foot, or from top to bottom, with Lysol. And they scrubbed the kitchen table and everything, the dining table. And they stretched me out on my mother's dining room table in the dining room in this nice house I just showed you, and proceeded to operate.
Gross.
I don't know what they used for.
Gee.
But anyway, when Mother couldn't stand it, she didn't go in. But my dad stayed in there, and he said they just took everything and just wound it out. And I not only had appendicitis, but I had adhesions of the small intestine. So they took all of them out and clip. Put a little clip every place they clipped it. And I came out of the anesthetic all right. And I guess I was about 3 or 4 days. They didn't believe that they figured you couldn't have water or food for 2 or 3 days. And I still remember how hungry I was and how thirsty. And Mother would just give me a little piece, a teaspoonful of water when I just get so dry I couldn't stand it. She'd give me a teaspoonful of warm water. And one of the kids came to the door when I was about the 3rd or 4th day. They came to the door with a piece of bread. And I saw that piece of bread and I started to bawl. And I said, Mother, get that kid out of here. I've got to have that bread. And she hurried and got him. I guess I don't know which one it was. Hurried and got him out. And for some, tough as it might seem, I pulled through that. And there was weeks before I got over that operation. But instead of giving you water and giving you F and giving you food and stuff, they nearly starved me to death. Is that about all you want of that? I was going to tell you that while we were in Roosevelt, or in Panguitch, I talked about Wally and Clark, and then my brother Frank was born in Panguitch, and my sister Jenda was born there when she was born on the 15th of August. And so Mother was down home, and we were in this new house, and Dad stayed up to take care of the ranch and the lake and the cattle and the stuff. And we had telephone service then, but it was just, these old phones that you had on the wall and you cranked.
Uh-huh.
And we got through to Dad that Mother had a baby girl.
There was telephone up to
There was a
Panguitch?
telephone up to the lake.
Gee.
Up to the Panguitch Resort, to the lake, and I
Oh.
don't know that we had one. I'm sure we didn't have I don't know whether we had a phone at our place or not, but they had one up at the
Resort.
resort, and somebody got on the phone, or got over and told Dad, and he'd broken his leg, and he didn't have any way to get home, only on horseback, but he got on a horse and came as fast as he could on his broken leg.
Gee.
Down to, well, it was, he was on crutches then, but he came down, and then Dennis and Kay were born in Roosevelt. So
So there's you, then Wally.
there was me and Wallace and Clark and Frank, then Jenda, then Dennis and Kay.
Okay. Everyone except Nedra was born in Panguitch.
Yes, yeah. Nedra was the only one that was born in Roosevelt. So now do you want me to tell you about trading our horse, trading our home? When
Okay.
Dad decided to go out to Roosevelt, and we had this nice home. I don't know. He sold the ranch and the cattle, and I don't know how. I don't remember what he got out of them or anything, but automobiles were just coming in, and Dr. Garn Clark had a 19. I think it was in 1914 that we went out there, and he had a new Buick. but it didn't have windows, and it wasn't enclosed like the cars are today. It was
It
just
was a
open.
roadster, a sport.
Yeah, it was just open Buick. But it was quite a big Buick, a big car. And so my folks took they took 2 wagons. They loaded the furniture, all the furniture that they could get, and the bedding and things like that, into the wagons. And they took 2 teams and the cow. We must have looked like we were going from the pioneer days, because they had the cow or 2 dragging behind, and the wash tubs and all of that kind of stuff, either filled with.
You look like the granny hillbillies, huh?
No, we looked like hillbillies plus pioneers. And I never been able to quite figure out yet how we made that. Because Mother, I don't know whether she learned to drive that Buick or not, but I know that they piled part of the bedding in the Buick, and most of us the little kids, and I rode in the back of the Buick, part of the way at least. Mother said that to me. Kay was just a baby, a year old, and she said, "Now, Eileen, Kay's your responsibility. You just take care of him." And Wally and Clark would have to drive the wagons and help drive those wagons or teams. And and Dad would have to drive part of the way. I don't know. I wish I had a little better idea of how they
drove the car, huh?
Who drove the car. I think Mother must have driven it part of the way, but I don't think we had it that long that she learned to drive. And there were no paved roads. If you'd get off into a rut, you were in trouble.
Well, Grandpa probably drove the car, and the boys drove the team.
I'm quite sure that's what happened. And I suppose when I wasn't having a 10K, I rode up and drove the team part of the time too.
I imagine.
Because I was perfectly capable of driving the team. My mother was scared to death of water. It would make her sick when we'd go to the Panguitch Lake and come down around that dugway. She'd get out and walk. And she'd walk down the dugway. So we went from, when we went to Panguitch, or to Roosevelt, we went up through Gunnison. I remember staying in Gunnison, or a little town called Fayette. I believe we stepped overnight in Fayette. And that wasn't an experience I'm not going to tell you about. But then we got over to Price and going up that canyon and those steep roads. Mother couldn't stand to ride in the car or the wagon, so she had to walk. And so that left another one to have to drive. And I just can't figure how we got along that way. But anyway, we got out to Roosevelt, and then we got out there and found that little old plastered house with anything, and all across when we got into the Uinta Basin, the roads were dry and dusty, and the wind was blowing, and it was a hard climate. It was awful hard on Mother. She was never happy any of the time we were out there. I don't think she was ever happy.
Anything but desirable compared to Panguitch.
Oh yeah, anything. I mean, she had a hard life at Panguitch, milking or helping milk cows and making cheese and butter and all of the things that she did. But she did have the satisfaction of she got premium prices for her butter and her cheese, and the resort was fun, and meeting people going through there was fun. They had a lot better life, a lot happier life in Roosevelt and Sandwich than they did in Roosevelt.
Well, now Grandpa Beck, or Grandpa Trent did that several times. He'd
Yeah.
kind of get a fortune and then he'd trade it off for something and start all over again, wouldn't he?
Well, it wasn't necessarily that he traded off, but Dad, for some reason, he was never quite satisfied too long in one place, and so. But we had several disasters out in Roosevelt that we'd have it good for a little while, and then we'd have trouble. I don't know whether it's when we first moved out there or right shortly after we moved out there. Dad bought a real nice dance hall and skating rink. It was comparable to the size of the gyms that we have now.
Roller skating rink?
Roller skating rink. Mm-hmm. We roller skated and they had dances there. It was a real popular place, and so when we first got out there, or when he bought that, I learned to skate real good, and we were making pretty good money on that, and it burned down. Just burned to the floor, to the ground, and I'm sure we didn't have insurance or anything on it, so we didn't have anything there. And then the place that Dad bought in Roosevelt, there was no place to make a living. There was no farm, or there was no land or anything. So in the summertime, he rented several farms. When one or two of them weren't productive, and they were awful hard on us. But where I do remember and had a pretty good time was he rented a farm, this Hayden. It was Bill Worthen's farm out at Hayden, and that was about 12 miles out of Roosevelt. And he had grain and hay and he had a beehive, a bunch of bees, and a lot of it's mainly bees. Is the bees and the thrashing and the honey, the hay that I mainly remember. I don't remember the hay as much as the grain, but he had pretty good sized beehive, or a bunch of bees out there, and Bill Worthen would he'd take the honey out of the hives. You know, these frames.
Mm-hmm.
He'd take them out, and that's the only thing we never had to take the honey. We never had to take the frames out of the hives. But he had a bee house out there, and he had a circular place that he had a little house that had this vat around it, and you'd and we had electricity out there then. And he had an electric knife. It was a big long knife like this, and he'd take the honey out and bring him into the bee house. And then Wally and Clark and me would extract the honey. And I'd run the end capper. I'd run this big long knife up and take the thin slice of the wax off, and then put these frames, and it'd hold about 6 or 8 around like this. And then Wally and Clark would take turns of turning that crank, and get up to centrifugal speed enough that they draw the honey out of the frame.
Comb, huh?
Mm-hmm. And we did that for 2 or 3 summers. But
Now, you said you did everything except,
taking it out of the hive.
oh, I thought you went in and got the honey out of the hive. So.
No, I never did that. But we had the beehive hats and gloves and things that. And I wasn't afraid of bees, nor neither was Wally. I don't think Clark ever was. So we'd work in there with those bees
Swarming around?
But we never swatted at them or anything like that, and they never bothered us. Only once when, I don't know how we ate that much honey and survived, because we ate honey all the time we were doing that. If there was something that looked real good, I'd cut it a little bit thick, and we'd always take a bucket up and get a little bucket of the cappings and take it home. And it's just like having, when you buy honey in these little frames.
In the little combs,
Yeah. Well, it was just like that, only better. And so we'd take a little bucket and take a bucket of that home every night. And we ate honey all the time we were in there.
Huh. Just straight honey.
We just put one of those in our mouth and chew it and get it until we get, and then spit the wax out and take another bite. And one day Clark picked up a piece that looked extra good in it, and as you go up that frame, the honey, the thing would fall back down. It'd kind of roll around and loop back over the wax or and he picked up a piece that a bee was on, so he got that bee in his mouth.
Oh my.
Oh, that was an experience, and that made him real sick. Time we got, his mouth all swelled up and his face all swelled up. But then another time, we wanted Jenna to go with us, and she was scared to death of bees. And we got her all rigged up. We put the best hats and the best gloves and the pair of overalls on her and laced the boots up to her knees, and took her up with us. And it was about 3/4 of a mile from the house. We took her up there with us, and when she got up there and saw those bees, she went deathly sick. And we had to take her back down. She couldn't stand it. It just made her sick to see us. And she's been scared of bees all her life. But that's where I...
Okay, now, when you got there, you went to Roosevelt, and then right after you got there, you started to work, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but I'll tell you this and then I'll go back and tell you I went to work. And, one day when we'd have the thrashers come, it used to be that they fixed real fancy meals.
Yeah.
You'd have
big meal for all the
great
thrashers.
big meals with pie and all kind of things like that. And I don't know. I think maybe I was I'm quite sure that I was helping Mother for getting the dinner on, but then I went outside, and Wally had traded a horse that Wally and I always had riding horses when we were out in Roosevelt, and he traded one of his horses, and bought a little sorrel mare. And she was a pretty good little racehorse. And he came up and he just put the reins over the post. And he said, "No, Ilene, don't get on that horse, because she's never been ridden by a woman yet." He said, don't, and he just had traded for her. She was just brand new. He said, "Don't try getting on her until you've had a chance to look her over a little bit, and you've had a chance to get around her a little bit." And one of the farmhands that was standing there said, "I thought you could ride a horse." He says, "I thought you were a better horsewoman than that." He says, "You gonna let him dare you like that to get on that horse?" Well, I never take a dare, you know that. And so I got on the little mare, and she started off just as pretty as could be. As I went past the house, I just had my hat in my hand, and I waved like this to Wally, and I said, "Hi, Wally," and it scared her, and she took off on the run. And it was at Thanksgiving time. Now, Thanksgiving time that year, the water had frozen over.
The ponds were frozen.
Yeah, and there was there was a field that was fenced in, and there was a pretty good sized stream that went through. It was a canal, and we got to the end of that, and I either had to make a decision to let the horse cross the pond or cross the canal. If I could get across the canal, I could run her over into the gate was open, and I could run her over into the field and run her down, let her run down. But the horse didn't give me a chance to make any decision. She took for to cross the canal herself on the ice. And we just got across, and as she made the last jump across the ice, she slipped and fell. And her hind parts went over me and just pushed me into that ground like that. And she jumped up and went running over into the open field. Well, Wally got it and grabbed somebody else's horse and followed me. And so he wasn't too far along or too far behind. But when they got there, I was so embarrassed that I wouldn't let anyone help me. And I got up and walked home. I said, "I don't need any help, I'm okay." And I walked home, but I wasn't okay. And that almost cost me having a family.
Yeah, that's why I always thought I was adopted.
Yeah, the doctor didn't think I did. And
Well, they told you wouldn't, didn't they?
yeah, they told me I likely would never have a family. And so that scared me right good. But now we'll go back.
Now you've got a picture there of you working in the bank.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wanted to, my feet aren't shown in the picture like this, are they?
No.
When we first moved to Roosevelt.
Okay, when you first moved to Roosevelt, huh?
Yeah, when we first moved to Roosevelt, I was in the 6th grade, and I don't remember whether it was while I was still in the 6th grade, or when school was out. It likely was in the spring when school was out. And there was a family, a real prominent family of Miles.
Miles was the last name.
Yeah, Miles was the family name, and there were 9 girls, and they all had college degrees. They were all very, they were doing very well, but they liked Roosevelt country and liked that out there. And one of the girls was Martha Edwards. She was the older one. And then there was the ones that I was most well acquainted with was Martha. And then Cree Evans lived right close by us, and she and Mother were real good friends. And she taught in the high school. And then there was Mildred Dillman, and she's become very famous now. Read an article just the other day about her artifacts and how much her opinions is valued on Indian culture and Indian artifacts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Mildred and her husband, he was an attorney out there, and they had, it was Ray Dillman, Mildred and Ray Dillman. He was an attorney, and they had an interest in the Roosevelt Mercantile. In fact, they had a controlling interest in it. And Martha Edwards worked in the bank, and she also gave music lessons. And she asked me one day when I was just out of high school, or out of the 7th grade, if I'd like to come and work for her in the bank. And
You were only 14, weren't you?
I was only 14. And what she wanted me to do in the bank, she ran those old posting machines, and you had to pull down everything. You'd pull it down like this with the. So I stood on a box by her side, and found the sheets for her, and then when she'd tell me, I'd pull the crank down, and I did some filing of the checks there too. The first month, my pay for the first month, the whole month's work, was $5 gold piece. And to look back on it, that was child. that would be exploiting a child, I guess.
Well, it would now, but you were tickled to death with
But I
$5
never was.
then.
Yeah, I was so happy with that. I can still remember going from the bank to our place, and it was about 3 blocks. And I don't think I touched the ground more than once or twice all the way. I was so thrilled. And Mother was so happy. She kept that gold piece for me for years. I don't know, she said she was going to always keep it for me, but then when circumstances, when we'd have, well, most of the time we were in Roosevelt, we either ate turkey or feathers.
Turkey or feathers.
Yeah.
But you did that on and off quite a few times in your life.
Yeah.
You were either plush or you were broke.
That's right. And anyway, I kept that up during the summer, and I worked there all summer. And then after school at night, of course, they increased my pay. I didn't always work for $5. And they increased my responsibilities, and I got to file checks and help with quite a few other things in the bank. And I worked in the bank all the time that I was in high school. And in fact, I was working in the bank when we left Roosevelt. I had, now is that what you want me to tell you about that? I had several fun experiences and some scary. And while we're talking about Mildred Dillman,
You've got a picture right there of you working in the bank, though.
Yeah, all right.
The wrong
Oh,
button.
wait a minute, it slipped. Okay.
Okay, now you might have to take that out for us to be able to see anything.
Can you see anything?
Okay.
Well, just a minute and I'll grab it out.
The plastic, that was quite dark.
This is kind of dark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There were 3 of us. This is later, after I'd been out to the bank. This is about the time I graduated.
All right, now can you point on there where you are?
I'm right here, right to the side. There's Jesse Orser, and then the cashier in the middle, and I can't remember his name. And then I'm on this side.
On your,
I'm on the, right here.
okay, now you get it up to where I'm, okay, now show me, you're right where?
Right where my finger's pointing.
Okay.
I'm on that
You're
side.
the dark one there, all right.
Yeah, I'm a little dark. I'm smaller than Jesse.
Okay.
And this is the same thing, only we're standing out on the steps. And I'm in the middle. That's Jessie Orser. And she played quite a prominent part in my life, in my love life.
In your love life?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in my working, Jessie was always a good friend of mine, and she helped me out. These are late. This is later when I worked in the bank, but I worked in the bank all the time I lived in Roosevelt, with the exception of when we were up on the farms, and of course then I couldn't. And I was in the Roosevelt State Bank when it closed.
Why did it close?
Yeah, well, they went under. It went back.
Collapsed?
Huh?
It collapsed?
It went
Was that
back.
with the stock market?
I don't know why it went under, but I was working there when it went under in about 1919, 1920. And then they reopened, and I still worked there after that.
Okay, now you told me what they did, so tell us.
What do you mean?
About checks.
Oh, well, that was just kind of interesting. They had, when the bank closed, it was very secret, and people came in, and one minute they were making deposits, and the next few minutes there was a sign went up that no more money accepted, and then the bank was under
Federal?
It was under protection of the banking business, or the federal bank, state bank, and so even though people had just been putting money in and drawing money out, when that word came, they just said no more withdrawals. They made a run on the bank, and there was no more withdrawals. And so Jesse and I, it seems to me like there was one other, but I don't remember. But for 2 or 3 days, all we did was stop payment on the check and protest them, and charge them $7.50 for doing it. And that made people awful mad. And we
When the checks came in and there was money there to pay for it.
yeah,
For it.
there was money in the bank to pay for it, but there was a federal
Injunction.
injunction
And so
against.
you send the check back that it was invalid,
Yeah.
and then you'd charge the people's account for the insufficient funds, huh?
Yeah.
Gee. Huh?
That was an awful experience. Well,
And then, so what happened to you?
well, they got scared from Jesse and me, and they told us to stay on the road. And when things looked like they were going to have a riot, somebody picked us up and took us down in Orser's. We stayed down in Orser's basement for 6 or 7 hours before we dared go home. And of course Jesse lived there, but I stayed down there. I might have stayed all night. I don't remember. I know we were afraid to go home, and we were afraid to. The bank people were afraid that we'd get mobbed. So they didn't like that procedure, the way they closed the bank at all.
Yet it was nothing to do with you. You
No.
just did what you were told to do.
We were just doing what we had to do. Well, can you turn that off for a minute? You see.
Yeah.
Whereabouts? Oh. Well,
Okay, now you were telling me while you worked there at the bank, you sometimes worked in the mercantile too.
well, yeah.
Okay, now tell us about that. About you working in the mercantile.
You know about my Indian boyfriend?
Uh-huh.
Okay. There's Roosevelt is out there in the Uinta reservation, and the White Rocks reservation was right just 7 miles from Roosevelt, and there were a lot of Indians came in there to trade, and I'd work in the bank until we closed, and then I'd go over and work for an hour or two in the mercantile, and that was the main interest in that was the Dillmans. Of course, it was like working for one family. They just shifted me around where they needed help. And I like to have fun. And
Now, come on, tell us what you told me before.
I was a little bit of a flirt.
A little bit. You were a lot of bit of a flirt.
As long as there was a counter between me and somebody else, I'd flirt with them and I'd have a good time. And I never thought anybody would take it seriously. I didn't. I was just just kidding them on. And I told this Indian came in, and he'd been away to school, and he could talk as well as I could. And he was a good-looking kid. He was just a handsome Indian. And so I waited on him several times and flirted with him. And I always sold him the best things in the house. And he came in one day and he said he wanted something nice for his girlfriend. And so I sold him the nicest jewelry we had. It was a pendant that went around your neck, and I don't just remember, but I know it was the most expensive piece of ladies' jewelry we had, and I held it up to him and showed him. And I said, "Your girlfriend would look pretty in this, wouldn't she?" He says, "Yeah, she looks real good in it." And then I showed him a red crepe de chine blouse. And I put that up to my face, and I said, how would she like this? Oh, he says, "That's beautiful." So he bought both of them. And I never told him my name. I just flirted along, and in the store, they all thought that was just real good. So whenever up until then, whenever he'd come in, I'd be the one that had waited on him, and then we'd go back in the back and laugh and kid about how much I sold him. So about, a couple of weeks after I sold him this jewelry and the red blouse, here I got a package in the mail. And this was nicely wrapped up, and here's the jewelry, the pendant, and the red blouse. Well, when Mother saw it, and I told her about it, she was scared silly, and she said, "You can't keep that, Ilene." And I said, "I don't want to keep it." And we went, she said, we better go talk to Mildred Dillman. She knows a lot more about the Indians than we do. And she says, "Let's go talk to her and ask her what to do." So when I showed Mildred and said, "I'm going to give it back to him," she says, "No, you're not." She said, that's one thing that you don't do the Indians. You don't break their trust. And she said, "That would make him feel awful if you did that." She said, "You keep him and write him a nice letter and thank him. And then you stay out of the road. Next time he comes in the store, you're not there." He came in and asked for me a time or two, and they never let me go out, or I wasn't there. So I never saw him after that. But I was scared right good, and I don't think I flirted very much for a while after that either.
I guess you didn't.
Huh?
I guess you didn't.
Yeah. But I was also working in the bank when I met Earl. Is that what you want to know about next?
Yeah. Did you know, Pappy, when you had those pictures there of the reservation, or were they before?
Yeah, this is right at the time.
Okay, now.
Now this was in I graduated from the Duchesne High School in the spring of 1921. And I'll tell you a little story about that first. There wasn't a great big, if you got, I want to see where that picture of Florence Dodd was.